guys, and welcome back to my channel. As you can hear probably from my voice still, I've been sick the last 2 weeks and I'm finally, to a stage where I can record again because I literally had no voice. Like I was not able to even make any kind of sounds for a long time, therefore I had to skip last week's video, sadly, but I'm back. For today's video, I decided to do a more beginner-friendly piece. You can already see a work in progress behind me, but more to that, once we start with the video. I wanted to do a kind of modular dress, so you can choose whatever length you want to do for this pattern. You can do a top, mini, midi, or even floor length, which is what I'm going to do today. And I'm super excited for this dress, for this piece, because I think it's going to look really, really cute. And I want to do something cute again. You're going to find all of the different fabric lengths for whatever size and length of the dress you choose in the sewing instructions and my Etsy listing in the description and so on. You're gonna find it and you can go out and buy the fabric that you need for whatever piece you're gonna make. So I hope that's gonna be easier for you guys to make this dress also for yourself, and I'm super excited to also see your versions. I chose this really, really nice blue chiffon, which obviously it's chiffon, so it's transparent. Therefore, I'm gonna add a lining to it. Obviously, if you don't have transparent fabrics, you do not need a lining. You work that out for yourself. And also, if you are more of a beginner, I would suggest use a more easy fabric. Chiffon is not the easiest to work with because it is very thin, and I guess a cotton poplin, for example, would be a better fabric to start your sewing journey with. But whatever you do, you can check the material list in the item description or the sewing instructions, so make sure to do that. And yeah, I guess we can just start right into the video. I had to record the intro again because I was on manual focus until like a long time. So I'm super sorry that my face cam is very blurry. My head is probably not 100% there yet, but let's carry on with the video. Well, let's start with the video. So I'm gonna start with the shell bodice. The facing works exactly the same way, so you can do that parallel as well. I have my front bodice, which lays on fold, so I have this, and then I have my side front bodice where you can see the bust notch right here. That is what you have to match up. And then I have my back, which has a dart in it. So that's gonna be put right here. That's the side seam, and you're gonna have to close the dart. We're gonna put a zipper in the center back. So let's start putting that together. I'm gonna start with the front. So put right sides together, match up the notch right here, and obviously the neckline and the higher waistline. Same to the other side. And that's what it looks like. I'm gonna go ahead and iron the seam allowance to the side seam because this is pretty sturdy and you can see how it bubbles up already. You wanna cut towards the stitching line every 1 or 2 centimeters to be able to iron nicely. So this is gonna enable the seam allowance to overlap wherever it needs to so that it lays nicer instead of this bubbly kind of seam, which is just gonna bulk up on the inside. It also helps to do that while sewing. You might have seen it in the clip. I did that here so that I can even put them together. It didn't work otherwise. So now I'm gonna put this over my tailor's hem right here. This has like a nice curve. I'm gonna iron it towards the side seam. If you have a clapper, thank you for everybody who told me that this is called a clapper. You can also use this to flatten the seams even more. For the back piece, we're gonna add the dart first. So I have my dart drawn onto the wrong side right here, and I'm just gonna put both lines on top of each other, and I'm gonna sew from down here all the way to the point. And that's what it looks like. Let's also iron this towards the back, which is this right here. As you can see, I added some interfacing tape with a stay stitch just to prevent anything from stretching out, especially in the front. I also have it there where there is, the neckline on the bias or like on the diagonal, but it is able to stretch out. So I put this tape right here to prevent that, and I also did that for the zipper, so the center back seam. And now we can put the side seams onto the front bodice and have the shell already done. We can repeat exactly the same for the facing, and then we're going to put the tiers together. So I've decided to iron the seam allowance of the side seam open and also add boning there, just to have something to hold everything up. This is totally optional. You do not have to do that. If you don't feel confident enough to do it, or you just don't have boning at hand, just skip it. I'm just putting it in to, I don't know why, to have something a bit more structured in here, I guess. I'm also thinking if I should pad the front area, but then obviously everything is going to turn into a non-beginner friendly piece anymore. So I'm contemplating whether I should do that. Obviously, if you don't do it, it's still beginner friendly, doesn't affect that. But obviously, I don't want you to feel pressure to do that and maybe not feel confident enough. But I'm going to put boning in here. I'm going to use Ridgeline boning, and I'm just going to top stitch it on. Probably going to use thicker boning. I have, I think, 1 centimeter thick Ridgeline boning, which I'm going to put right here in the center of the seam. And then I'm going to have a top stitch right and left of the ditch of the seam so that it's going to look nice from the right side. So for the boning, you always have to leave the seam allowance area up here unboned, otherwise you're going to have problems once you line the piece or once you put the facing on. I'm going to be very gracious right here and do like 1.3 centimeters. I like to have a little bit more wiggle room with my boning, and I'm going to do the same down here like that. And then I can, turn it and have the right side facing up, and then I know what I am stitching. So before starting with the tiers for the skirt, I actually want to do the ruffled area right here for the neckline and also the straps. So I just happen to have like 25 centimeters left from 5 meters of fabric, because floor length, a lot of tiers, a lot of fabric consumption. So I have this much still left, and I want to try to cut out everything that I need for the small bits and pieces that I'm planning to do. So I already tried to make a strap. I want to do a tight strap up here on the shoulder, so I need 4 pieces in total. This is going to be more than enough for back and front of one side. So I'm just going to repeat this and have, the other side as well, and the rest I can use for ruffles. Now, obviously, the usual way to make spaghetti straps like this would be to cut a 3 centimeter piece on the bias, and then you can turn the piece inside out. There are so many methods you can use. A tool like this, which is basically just a very long hook, which you can pull through a tiny tunnel and then turn it right sides out that way. You can do it with the string method. I did a couple of reels on these methods as well. I'll link one down below if you're interested. And since I don't have enough to cut on the bias, this is all I have. I mean, I could do these on the bias like this, but honestly, it's gonna be a lot of puzzling. There's gonna be a lot of seams everywhere. Don't want to deal with that. So what I am going to do is just fold it like bias binding and then just top stitch like this. I did it for this piece already. It's also fairly nice. You're, I think, in the end not gonna notice too much of a difference. It's, in my opinion, a little bit more work, but that's fine. And now I'm gonna cut off a 3 centimeter stripe, another one. Out of this is just selvage to selvage. So this is my strip right here. This is the right side, it's a tiny bit more vibrant. So I'm putting it wrong sides facing up, and I'm going to show you really quickly how I'm going to fold it. I'm going to fold under the sewing machine as I'm sewing, basically, because it's a bit easier for me. But obviously you can always prepare this beforehand, and then it's going to be a quicker sew. Probably it's the easiest if you start by just folding it in half, like so, and then you just iron it along. It's very difficult to do this with chiffon. And then once you have the center fold line like this, you have like somewhat of a guidance until where you need to fold like the raw edges towards, in order for it to also, once you flip it on top of itself, you have the desired foldage, I guess. And then you have your piece done. I'm gonna do it for the whole thing, selvage to selvage, and then I'll come back. Okay, I have now 2 strips for my straps, for my shoulder straps. I can put these aside for now and work on the neck ruffles. I'm just gonna use whatever I have right here. I don't know how much I need. I'm just gonna make some ruffles and then use whatever I need depending on how much my foot ruffles, the fabric, and so on. But what I definitely want to do is a fold on the side that will be visible. So I'm gonna have double the amount of the ruffles that I want, ruffle it on the raw edge and have the folds, you know, be the exciting ruffled part. And probably I want to have 2.5 centimeters folds, and then I need a centimeter seam allowance, so I have 3.5 times 2 equals 7 centimeter ruffles. And with the fabric I still have left, I can make 2 full salvage to salvage strips of ruffling material like this. I'm gonna put right sides together of the salvage edge and make this into like a long strip of ruffles. For that I don't want to have a straight seam, so I'm actually gonna do the like kind of bias binding putting together method, which means I'm gonna sew a diagonal seam. So I'm putting right sides together but at a 90-degree angle, and then I'm gonna sew from edge to edge and cut the excess off, so that once I pull it apart you have a diagonal seam. You fold it, the seams will never meet, so it's less bulky. You want to iron the seam allowance of that diagonal seam open so that it is even less bulky than what it already is. And then once you fold this, as I said before, the seam allowances will never meet. So one end's here, the other one's here. So what I want to do now is put wrong sides together on the long sides, just like that. You can either do a basting stitch here into the seam allowance at like 5 millimeters, or, which is what probably I'm gonna do, I'm not sure yet, I'm going to just ruffle and baste at the same time. So I'm just gonna skip the basting stitch, I guess. But I think I want to iron a fold line into the piece. Okay, with that I went ahead and just steamed the ruffles so that they all face the same direction. I made sure to not flatten them too much so they still have, you know, the ruffled kind of texture that I want. And I made way too much. I'm gonna go ahead and start putting right sides together, ruffle and bodice. So I'll end up having a border like this in the neckline. I think that's gonna look really, really cute. I'm thinking about going down under the arm because I feel like once you put your arm down, the ruffles will get folded downwards and it's gonna flop down right here as well. I don't think that's gonna look really nice. So I am thinking about decreasing the ruffles to basically almost 0 here, like that, and then increasing the depth of the ruffles back to the 2.5 centimeters once it continues over the front neckline. So that's what I will be doing here. I'm gonna start pinning. I have like an uneven edge here, that's why I'm like overlapping it a tiny bit. And I'm gonna start pinning in the center back, and then probably around 5 centimeters before the side seam, I'm going to decrease the ruffles to, as I said, almost nothing. Maybe like 0.5, something like that, so that you still have it, but it's not gonna be folded down with your arm once you know, put down your arm. And then it's gonna end up looking somewhat like this. And same thing here, at 5 centimeters, I'm gonna increase to the 2.5 again. And now I can just go over the center front line just like that with a normal seam allowance. Repeat the same thing on the side seam right here, and then, you know, stop at the center back here. And that's what it looks like. Once you look on the wrong side, you see how I did that with the seam allowance. I'm just gonna cut it down to the seam allowance of the bodice, and on the other side as well. And then once this is turned up, you see that this is decreased to about half, and then it's hopefully less prone to fold down and look weird. What we also can put in our bodice now are the straps. They're gonna go right here. I'm gonna put them a bit off of the front dividing seam. I'm gonna put them probably like 3 centimeters towards the side seam from the front dividing seam, because I feel like it would be too much in the middle if I put it like right on the front dividing seam. And since there is the ruffles, it's not going to be really that visible, and it's not going to be like an issue if it doesn't perfectly match with the front dividing seam. So I'm going to take my straps, and since I need 4 of them, I'm going to cut these in half first of all, like so. That should be enough to do a bow tie. I'm going to make sure that I have the, in my opinion, right side of the strap facing towards the piece, and I'm gonna have the stitches face towards the side seam. So I'm gonna offset it by about 3 centimeters and just pin it in place here. And then I'm gonna add another one, same thing with the right side facing towards the piece. And with all of that fixed in place, you can go ahead and bar tack into the seam allowance, or you can fix it in place with the facing in one go. I'll probably recommend bar tacking so that you can take out the pins. So let's do that. And with the bodice, with the shell bodice now completed, you can go ahead and do the skirt and finish the complete shell. But the skirt is going to be very heavy or like super voluminous. So I think it's the easiest if you put the bodice facing onto the bodice first. I'm going to put right sides together. As you see, I fixed some pads to my lining. I literally just placed them around the rounded area and just top stitched them. So I'm just going to put right sides together of facing and shell. I'm going to match up all of the seams. You're going to find that the facing is smaller than the shell. That's how it's supposed to be, like that. And we can go ahead and sew the neckline, and I'm also going to understitch. And that's what it looks like. So we can flip this right sides out, which also will make the ruffles go up this way because we fixed the seam allowance in place there. And now we just want to go very carefully over top of that seam. Try not to flatten the ruffles too much. Right here in the center, you can see how everything's like kind of being weird. That is because the seam allowance here does not open up enough. So I'm actually going to cut into the seam allowance at the center front to allow it to open up nicely. So once we actually iron it flat, there is not going to be so much bulk. And as you can see now, it lays flat. And that's the bodice prepared. So let's continue with the skirt. So I'm gonna ruffle my tiers by machine, and I just went ahead and ruffled the first layer, the first tier, and just checked my settings basically. So I just went ahead and ruffled it with whatever settings I felt were maybe fine, and that's what it came out as. And now what I did is I put in a needle, a pin for my center front, so I just halved it and then marked that spot, so that once I put it around my bodice right here, I can see whether my settings are, you know, too loose, too tight, or even, you know, good already. So I'm just gonna put this on here, match it up with my bodice, and just see where I go from there. So that is the perfect amount of ruffling. So my settings are the best it could ever be. So basically the math is you have tier 1 with a specific amount which fits your size. You double tier 1 to get tier 2, you double tier 2 to get tier 3, you double tier 3 to get tier 4, basically that's it. So I have 1 panel in tier 1, and 2 and 2, 4 and 3, and 8 and 4, and therefore I can just go ahead and do it that way. So I have 2 panels for tier 2, and I'm gonna put them together with a French seam, which is not necessary if you don't have transparent fabric. So I'm just doing that for the sake of having transparent fabric. French seams work by putting wrong sides together, so the opposite of what you would normally do. I have the selvage edges here. Right here are like holes where the fabric is woven. It's like put into the machine. So there are some holes. I'm gonna sew right next to it, like 5 millimeters next to it. Then I'm gonna cut it down to like 3 millimeters, flip it right sides together, iron it, and then do another stitch 5 millimeters next to the first one, which encapsulates the raw edge of the seam that is cut down. So once you have right sides facing outwards, there's a normal seam, but on the inside you have like this kind of tunnel and no raw edges, no overlock seam, nothing like that. So that is a very, very high-end method of finishing transparent fabrics, and that's what I'm going to do throughout the whole thing. I'm quickly going to do that here. And with the second tier done, I can put this right sides together with the ruffled edge of the second tier meeting the unruffled edge of the first tier. Put the center front together with the seam of the second tier and then just pin it together. And as you can see, it fits pretty much perfectly. It's not exactly the same. The second tier is a teeny tiny bit bigger, but that's totally fine. That's the better way around. So I can just ease both layers together. Oh no, they fit actually pretty much perfectly. Okay, let's put them together. And then I'm gonna go ahead and sew both layers together here. And that is basically what you are doing for all of the other panels. I'm skipping over to the last panel because it's literally the same over and over again. So you just sew however many panels you want to make, depending on how long you want to make your dress. And before actually ruffling your last panel, we're gonna hem it, and I'm gonna show you how to do that. I have my last layer right here on the table. It's completely sewn together, as you can see with my French seams here. This one is the fourth panel with 8 strips of selvage to selvage pieces. So this is a long one, but before I'm going to ruffle this, and you have to do that for whatever last layer you have, you're gonna hem the piece before it's ruffled. It's just way easier. So I'm just gonna do a 5 millimeter hem right here. So I'm gonna fold it twice and then top stitch it. I'm probably gonna use my hemming foot for that because it is a straight piece. It's not a circle skirt. It can be a bit more difficult if you're doing it with that, but this is just a straight piece, and I'm just gonna go around the hem and hem it with my hemming foot. If you don't have that, not a problem at all. You also don't have to do the this method of hemming. You can also do a rolled hem, or you can hem it with your overlock if you have like a setting for that. So whatever you want to do. I'm just gonna do the 5 millimeter one and finish that before ruffling, and then I'm gonna put it onto my final layer right here. I am finally at the stage where I can put the skirt onto the shell of the bodice, which is what I'm gonna do right now. So I flipped the lining out of the way like this so that I am sure to only sew the skirt onto the shell. Now I'm gonna put right sides together like so. I have to ease it in a tiny bit because it's a little bit too big, which is fine, and then I can put these together. So let's actually determine the center of the skirt right here, which needs to be put together with the notch in the center front of my bodice, and from there I can go to the center back and then do halves and pin them together that way, or I can just ease them together under the sewing machine, which is what I usually do, but I figured this is so pronounced in the very front, so I'll do it nicely spread out and evenly. And same to the other side, like so. And let's put it together. So now that the shell is done, we can continue with the lining skirt. I just cut out a skirt that is the full length of my dress, selvage to selvage. So it's gonna have a little bit of volume, not too much. It's gonna be so that you're not gonna flash anybody, but it's still gonna be voluminous enough so that you can twirl and stuff like that, hopefully. So I was also thinking about adding a ruching detail to the bottom, like the hem of the lining skirt, but I think I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna see about that. I'll insert myself of the future if I change my mind here. Well, I guess I suggest to do some ruffles at the hem, at least a little bit more volume at the hem. So if you want to do a full length, you're gonna do the length of 3 tiers and then, you know, like do the amount you put into tier 2 and put that at the bottom, if that makes sense. I think it's better that way. What I will be doing for sure is hemming this piece and also gathering it to the size of my upper waist so that I can just put it onto my lining. So let's actually do that. I gathered it a teeny tiny bit too much, so I'm probably gonna take out the gathering stitch after I'm done. I can stretch it to the length that I need it to be, but I think it's gonna, you know, be uncomfortable if that is like super tight here, so I'm gonna take out the gathering stitch afterwards. And yeah, then we can put the zipper in and close the center back and the dress is done. Zipper time. So as you can see, I took out the lining through the neckline right here so that it's out of the way. And then we can put our zipper in. I have a very long zipper right now, which I probably won't need. I think I'm gonna do until the first tier. I'm just gonna sew the zipper in until that seam and then, you know, shorten the zipper afterwards. So my neckline right here is where I'm gonna start with the zipper. If I fold the zipper band down, I can see exactly where I need to start sewing the zipper in. So I'm gonna put that right sides together with the shell only and pin it in place and then work my way down. I like to flip this and work this way around like this. And then without stretching either the fabric or the zipper, if anything, you want to stretch the zipper a tiny bit. You're gonna pin the zipper onto your piece and then you can use a zipper foot to sew the zipper in place. And since I'm working with the selvage edge, I'm trying to like have a little bit more seam allowance here in my chiffon, starting from this point onwards, so that I don't have the, you know, ugly edge showing on the right side anywhere. So now I can go ahead and sew from here all the way up here. And I also want to flip the zipper band down and sew it like this onto the piece as well. So to copy the placements of the seams to the other zipper side, I like to close the zipper and then use some horizontal pins for spots like the higher waistline, the neckline and the tier 1 and 2 seam that I stopped the zipper here. As you can see, stopped right there. So I'm also gonna put a pin right here where the seam is into the other zipper side. And then same to up here, I'm gonna use a pin to mark the neckline. Then I can open the zipper back up and transfer the placement to the other side. I'm gonna start with the waistline. So I'm gonna put right sides together here and I'm gonna leave the horizontal pins in until I'm sewing exactly that spot, because it's just easier to know exactly because stuff shifts under the sewing machine. And now I can sew the other zipper in. And that's what it looks like with the zipper closed. I almost managed to make it perfect. It's just a millimeter lower than the other side, which I'm fine with. So I'm gonna go ahead and close the shell skirt. And I think I'm just gonna do a simple closure, right sides together, and not do French seams here. So I'm just gonna put right sides together and sew from the hem all the way up until like as far as I can get up to the stitching line of the zipper right here. let's iron the seam allowance of the center back seam open. What you can do, which looks really nice, is kind of fold the raw edges of the rolled hem upwards and then use some hem tape to fix it in place, or you can just go over this again with a top stitch. That looks really nice and it's not gonna come loose anytime soon, so you're never gonna see the raw edges there. And that's what it looks like. From the zipper to the skirt looks super, super nice. Managed to do that very well. And now we can go ahead and clean up the inside. So open the zipper back up, and then you wanna take out all of your lining and flip down the lining onto the zipper band and just pin it in place. And right here, I'm just gonna pin until that seam where I stopped for the shell. Mark that so that I know until where I have to sew. Now I can use a one-sided zipper foot and close the facing side, and then I'm going to repeat the same. Before doing that though, I'm going to measure from the waistline down to the notch right here that I made and transfer that to the other side of the lining so that I have an even result for the lining. And last not but least, let's close the center back seam in the lining as well. Same as I did for the shell. Just gonna put right sides together and sew from hem all the way up until I reach the stitches here at my zipper. So I can show you here again what I meant with folding it under. I just did this like a 45-degree angle, like so, and then steamed it. And then I used some hem tape and fixed it in place that way. And now this won't show on the outside and it looks rather nice on the inside as well. So let's iron this seam open as well. And then the dress is done. And that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. And don't forget that I'm having a Cyber Week sale still on my Etsy shop. So if you're fast, you can grab this at a high discount. So make sure to check out the link down below. If you haven't already and you want to support this channel, please hit like and subscribe to my channel and ring the bell so you will get notified every time that I post. I post on Sundays, hopefully healthy and more regularly now. And in the meantime, you can go and check out my social media, which I was actually able to work throughout the whole time I was sick. So if you're interested in short form content, go check out that and give me a follow there. Links to all of that are also in the description down below. The most direct way to support me and keep videos just like this one coming is to head over to my Etsy store, where you find this pattern here as well as so many other patterns, all of which have a video tutorial so you can sew along with me. Of course, also a written instruction. So thank you so much for that support. Please also make sure to use the link that I have in my description down below, because it is an affiliate link. This is nothing where you have to pay any extra. I just get a little bit back from Etsy, which is really great with all of the fees and stuff. So thank you so much. Links are in the description down below. A special thank you to my channel members. You can get exclusive benefits through the link in the description down below. And with that, thank you so much for watching, and I'm gonna see you next Sunday. Bye guys!